Alright, so today is Sunday, January 12th, 2020, and I'm standing here at the intersection of Yonge and Bloor in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. On the front of my bicycle I have an action camera mounted, and in this video I'm going to be riding in the east direction along Bloor and giving a tour of Bloor St East. Alright, so as I begin riding east, you can see over on the left there's a big concrete building that says Hudson's Bay Company on the outside. That's where the Hudson's Bay, or the Bay department store, or one of their locations, is here in Toronto. This part of Bloor is kind of known for having a lot of offices that are relating to insurance companies. So we'll see a number of towers related to that. And the tower over on the left, on the top of it, there's a symbol for Unilever, because they're Canadian headquarters. Bloor Street was named after a man named Joseph Bloor, who had a brewery, which was on Bloor Street, I imagine. And Joseph Bloor was also known for having established the community of Yorkville, which is just sort of west of where we started, a little bit north of Bloor. So the temperature currently is about -4 degrees Celsius, which is quite a difference from what it was yesterday. Yesterday at one point I looked at the thermometer and it showed 11 degrees Celsius in the positive, and it pretty much rained the entire day yesterday. So as a result of all that rain we got yesterday, followed by the temperature dropping below freezing today, there are a few small little ice patches on the side of the road, but thankfully I'm riding a bike which has studded winter tires. To be fair, I'm sure there would be a lot more ice on this road if they hadn't applied a ridiculous amount of salt to the road, as they always do here in Toronto. Salt does have its benefits, but it is very corrosive and harmful to vehicles and bikes, of course. The building over on the left says Rogers on it. Rogers Communication. They have a lot of office buildings around this area too. There's also a road called Ted Rogers Way, which I guess we've already passed. Over on the right, there's a sign that says National Post on one of those towers. National Post is a Canadian newspaper. And we're approaching the intersection of Bloor Street and Sherbourne. Sherbourne's a street that I made a video before on, where I rode south along it from starting around here. It has a protected bike lane on it, one of the first of its kind in Toronto. And back in the day, Sherbourne was the end of Bloor Street. Bloor Street would have dead-ended here back a little over 100 years ago, until they extended it and they built the Prince Edward Viaduct, which we're, of course, just starting to ride on now. The Prince Edward Viaduct consists of 3 separate parts, and basically the Prince Edward Viaduct connected what used to be Bloor Street, where it ended back there, to Danforth Avenue over on the over on the east side of the Don Valley. But between there was about a kilometer and a half of distance that they needed to span, and there's actually 2 valleys that you needed to cross. There's, of course, the Don Valley, which is the big one, but there's also the Rosedale Valley, which is just over to my left right now. So to get around that, they had to actually curve Bloor Street, and where I'm riding right now, we had to kind of curve after the intersection, and that was to shorten the span that they needed to cross with their bridges. So they actually had to build out the side of the valley, infill it with extra material. So where I was riding just back there, that was mostly on land which had been infilled. And now I'm curving again, and now I'm actually spanning the Rosedale Valley, and these concrete barriers that you can see on the side, that's the edge of the bridge. So if I were to, maybe I'll do it. I'll pull over here and I'll show you looking down into the Rosedale Valley. So over on the side of the road, you can see, if you look over at the top of this barrier here, you can see there's a road down there. That's Rosedale Valley Road, and there's a path beside it. And that valley there flows downhill and eventually meets up with the Don Valley, the bigger valley that we'll be crossing shortly. So to be able to span that gap there, they had to build an arch bridge, and the construction of that bridge is really similar to the next bigger bridge that we'll be crossing. Over on the left, that glass and brick building that you can see, that's the Castle Frank subway station, which is named after, well, probably named after Castle Frank Road that it's on, but Castle Frank Road was named after the summer home of John Graves Simcoe, who was the person who first settled this part of the country. He established Toronto. There's a lot of things that are named after Simcoe in Ontario. Simcoe, there's a Simcoe Street, there's Lake Simcoe, there's a Simcoe Island over near Wolfe Island in Kingston. Lots of things named after John Graves Simcoe. So this area here, after the summer home that he had, was just simply known as Castle Frank. And it's technically part of, I think, Rosedale you would consider it, which is the neighborhood that's sort of north of Bloor here. And up ahead, so we'll now be just about to cross the Don Valley, which is the much bigger of the two valleys. And the third portion of the Prince Edward Viaduct. It's the third segment of it. And this bridge was, as I said, constructed in a very similar way as the other one. It's a concrete arch bridge. It actually has, below the deck that we're riding on right now of the bridge, there's a second deck, and that's where the subway runs. And they added the ability to do that when they first built the bridge. They sort of left it there for that future expansion to happen. And in the process, they saved, the city a lot of money, because otherwise they would have had to, build a totally separate bridge for the subway to cross this viaduct. So you can see this bridge, it has the same sort of concrete barrier on the side, but then above that, it has sort of a steel mesh, and that was added quite a bit later, almost 100 years later, and that's to stop people from committing suicide off of this bridge. I'm just going to pull over here so you can get a look of what it looks like over looking down on the Don Valley. The bridge has these little bump outs where you're able to stand and get a good look. They even have some binoculars that you can use. But if we look over the edge, you can see that water body down there, that's the Don River. And then over towards the left, that pathway there, that's the Don Valley Trail. I've made a video where I've ridden down that before. Over there to the left, that's the Don Valley Parkway, a major highway which goes downtown and eventually connects up with the Gardiner Expressway. Over on the other side, that's Bayview Avenue, that other road over there on the other side of the river. Although the temperature is showing as -4 degrees Celsius, the weather forecast also quotes the feels like temperature, which they're saying it feels like about -10 degrees Celsius. The feels like temperature accounts for the wind chill. So the Prince Edward Viaduct was completed in 1918, which connected together the city of Toronto with East York, or at least the Danforth portion of East York, which had otherwise been pretty hard to get to because this is quite a big valley. And previously I think there was just a trail that you could walk to get across, or you would either have to go down, sort of down towards the lake and cross the valley at one of its shorter spans. They had bridges down there, but so this bridge really connected the city together, and I think it definitely helped Danforth Avenue thrive as time moved along. So you can see that the bike lane I was in, they have some arrows here to shift me over to the left, because that far right lane, that actually curls around, and it actually is an entrance ramp onto the Don Valley Parkway that we saw below. So this intersection up ahead is for Broadview Avenue, and if I were to continue through the intersection, I would then be on Danforth Avenue, and Danforth is a street that I'll look forward to covering in a future video. So anyway, that concludes my tour of Bloor St East and the Prince Edward Viaduct in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'll look forward to reading your comments in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.